Manga and animation are two huge industries in their own respect, and today we will explore both of them by contrasting them. So if you're a fan of either or both, buckle up and let's jump right into it. Just before we start, we'd like to clarify that by animation we mean 2D animation and not 3D animation, and more specifically, Eastern style animation such as anime. Alright, with that out of the way, let's start for real. How do characters look in manga versus animation? Characters are the centerpieces of entertainment in all of its forms. They are who we root for and care about. At their core, characters are all the same narratively. They have wants and needs, and they are used to drive the plot, and have their distinct appearances, styles, personalities, and so forth. But what about the way they look? How do characters look in manga versus animation? Are they any different? Characters in manga and Eastern style animation look somewhat similar because they follow the conventions of style of the area they're produced in. Let us analyze the eyes for instance. The way eyes of a given character are drawn depend heavily on their characteristics. Cutesy, friendly, and approachable characters tend to have big round eyes, while characters that are a bit more serious and mysterious tend to have eyes that are sharp and narrow. Another example of a style convention is the drawing of extremely small pupils in the midst of a huge area of eye whites to denote that the character has either gone berserk or is in shock. These are a couple of examples on how eyes are handled by anime and manga. The style might differ on a bigger scale, but the core is largely the same. Noses in anime and manga are typically very small and very stylized, while all the details scaled down to a line or two. And the same thing goes for the mouth. Another stylization we notice in both manga and anime is how the face is drawn. Faces are usually small with pointy chins, but we could also find long and pointy faces given for characters that are a bit more serious or meant to evoke a charming look. Round faces are typically reserved for children. When it comes to the anatomy of anime and manga characters, they're typically on the realistic end. Sometimes the only differentiator between manga and anime characters are if they have colors and if they're animated using the frame-by-frame animation technique. Sounds obtuse, but it is just that. The other more glaring differentiator is the specific style of the artists themselves, which can largely differ from anime to anime and from manga to manga, let alone between the two mediums. To better illustrate this, look at the popular trending anime and manga counterparts: Naruto, Luffy, and Attack on Titan. They're all different in their own way, but are still similar as they follow certain conventions and rules. Other examples on the extreme ends of stylization and realisticness would be Berserk and Vampire Knight. Alright, we understand how characters are handled. What about the heart of anime and manga? The story.
Before we continue, let me tell you about Skillshare, which is a platform that has hundreds of classes about animation, drawing, illustration, and several other creative fields. We've got you guys this course from Skillshare about how to draw 2D faces like in mangas and anime. The course is designed for beginners and it is taught by Sensei, who will teach you various techniques and topics about drawing faces, including how to draw circles and lines, how to draw the face proportions, structure, and shapes, and even more. The Skillshare platform offers a wide variety of additional related courses, and the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description will receive a free month of premium membership. Alright, now back to the video.
The story in manga versus animation. Stories in both manga and anime are as different and varied can be. There are loads of genres and niches from adventure to slice of life. The only differentiator between manga and anime would probably be the way stories are told. That is the presentation of the story. Mangas tell their stories using written text, whether a small piece on the side narrating the scene or giving context, or via the text on speech bubbles when the characters speak and interact with each other. Noise and other sound cues are also expressed via text, as in onomatopoeia, and different shapes that describe a sound. On the other side of that, anime expresses a lot of these elements with actual audio and speech. This does not affect one or the other or give any the upper hand. Both manga and anime are incredibly popular and enjoyable. They are both an art form where you have to master to communicate your desired message and tell the story you want to tell effectively and masterfully. masterfully. A great example of that would be any of Junji Ito's works. He masters the art of telling gut-wrenching horror stories using the medium of manga, and it terrifies people just as much as the latest blockbuster horror movie or anime. The animation in manga versus animation. What we mean by the animation here is simply the movement. Manga and anime are stories after all, and they need to move forward. Things happen, people react, and so forth. How anime does that is simply by using the animation technique of frame-by-frame animation. Frame-by-frame animation is time and effort consuming, not to mention extremely expensive. So you might notice that the use of other techniques, like using camera movements on a still scenery to evoke the sense of movement, when there is not any to save time and energy. Some anime even use 3D environments and elements to make things a bit more efficient. As for manga, it is a bit of a different story. As we mentioned earlier, audio is communicated using text, that is, using onomatopoeia. Similar to that, movement is communicated using patterns and shapes. For instance, several straight lines that are tapered in one end, where the movement starts, and typically thicker at the other end, where the movement ends. Swirls, squiggles, exclamation points, onomatopoeia, and composition are all mixed and used as a way to effectively communicate actions and movement in manga, and the result, if everything is used masterfully, is chef's kiss. The production of manga versus animation. Both manga and anime demand a lot of effort. However, animation is typically a lot more time, effort, and money consuming. For manga, there is typically one mangaka, the manga artist, who does most of the work with their assistants, anywhere from 3 to 4 people. There can also be authors to the manga, but sometimes the mangaka is the author. These mangakas typically produce one chapter a week or a month and release it in magazines that are owned by the publishing company that the mangaka works for. Once the manga is finished, it is gathered in one book. As for the tools mangakas use, they are extremely varied. They can either use digital art software such as Clip Studio Paint and graphics tablets to produce their manga, or they can go the traditional way with pencils, inks, brushes, dip pens, nibs, and so forth. As for the production of animation when it comes to the tools, they are yet again somewhat similar. Animation is mostly produced digitally these days, even when the animation has a traditional feel to it. More often than not, it is actually made digitally. Usually animation software such as Toon Boom Harmony, OpenToonz, and DV Paint are used alongside graphic tablets. And like manga, animation on a larger scale requires a lot of people. Storyboard artists, colorists, line artists, voiceover artists, and so on and so forth. That is because animation is produced frame by frame, and so each one of these frames needs to be sketched out, and composed, and then lined, and then colored, and of course effects are then added as needed. After that is done, voiceover needs to be added alongside other audio such as music, and sound effects, and so forth. What we have described here is largely simplified for the sake of this video. The animation production pipeline is a lot more complex. Okay, now we have a good idea about how both of these industries operate. Now, which do people prefer? Manga or animation? You would think that since animation easily captures people's attentions with its colors and animations, that it would be the preferred medium. But it is not. In Japan, manga is said to be the most popular one due to how accessible it is. You can read a manga anywhere from a waiting room to while you're commuting, which Japanese people do a lot. Anime, not so much. However, on a larger scale and outside of Japan, anime and manga are similar in their popularity, with anime having a bit of the upper hand. So we could definitely say they are even. And that was that for our video today. We hope you learned something new and interesting for you today. Let us know in the comments section below. With that being said, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you in the next one.